Hey everybody, here to do a real quick video on Bitcoin. Sorry, I was having some issues um, with my tool I use for streaming, but yeah. So just to give a real quick, maybe 5 minutes, talk about what Bitcoin's doing, where it's going, what I think is likely going to happen next. I do think that we are, in a little bit of an impulse here. I don't think it's going to last, too long, and maybe we won't get as high as what I'm about to say here. But what I do see is that we are on a shorter term, a shorter time frame. We are in a little bit of an impulse. Going back here to our top here at 13,800, 13,900. We see a three wave down to an A, we see a three wave up to a B, and then there is looks like a five wave or a diagonal that gets us down here to finish the C. And this is, I think, either a W or this is an A. And then we have our three wave pattern to get us up to an ABC up here. And then what we are working on right now is resolving all of this. And what I see here is more of a 1, a 2, and working our way down for a 3, and then we're going to go up for a 4, and then we're going to come down for a 5. So that's our high level on the correction. What I'm taking here is a trend-based fib from the top down here to our first pivot, which was down at about 9,000, and then moving ourselves all the way up here back to about 12,380 or so. And so I'm seeing this as more of an A and a B, and working our way to finish off the C. Now with that, again, I've talked about this before, but with this trend-based Fibonacci, we are looking at our third wave, or our C, or maybe this is going to be a Y for a WXY. What we're looking for is no further penetration to the 123.6, which is sitting down here at about 6,400. Now, do I think it's going to get that low? I don't, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to. So I have to keep a view of all different scenarios that we might go down that low. And so, looking at that 6,400 as a mark, we know 6,400, if I zoom out a little bit here, we know 6,400 was a pretty significant number down here as well back, about mid-May. So I am keeping a pretty close eye on that. Although I am skeptical of us going beyond at about 7,200. I've been talking for a long time about 72, 7,500, that range, and I do think that that is going to be a significant area that we pivot. But again, I'm on the 4-hour chart here, and I'm going to zoom in now. I'm going to zoom in here and kind of take a look at a closer perspective here on where we're currently at. So it's easy to see that we have had basically a triple bottom, if you will, down in this range at about 7,800, 7,750. In this range, I do think that this is going to be pretty solid support, at least for a little while. So this area right here, I'm looking to have a little bit of support. So that should prove to be a bounce zone for this. But what I will say is where we're currently at. So right now we're at about 81.73 or so on BitMEX. I do think what we're going to see is something a little bit like this. So right now we've seen this A, and then we have this interesting pattern down here to create this B. So you could see this as a little bit of a diagonal of sorts, which is a little suspect. And then we're going to go down here for the A and then the B. And then where is this C going to land? Maybe this is just going to be a flat, which would get us up here to about 8,500. I could totally see that happening. And how long this is going to take still remains to be seen. I do think that we come down and we retest this 21 exponential on the 4-hour. So this is something that we should pay pretty close attention to, this zone right here, because this exponential is going to start to move up as long as we're trading above it. So keeping an eye on that, looking for that bounce in this zone for us to move back up. All right. So now that I've sort of outlined that, let's clean this up a little bit and take a look and see if this technically makes sense, if this technically can work out. So if we're looking for an A, and then we're coming down for a B, which is completed, our C is going to come, my guess is probably going to come up here at 8,600. So it could go just to here. It could stop here at 8,300. It could go up to 8,600, but technically it could come all the way up here to about 8,800. I have a hard time seeing us move up here to 8,800 with as much resistance as we have. We're moving, sorry, our price action is currently below the 55 exponential on the 4-hour. We are above the 21 exponential on the 4-hour, which is promising. So what I really want to see, I want us to see us move down here, and then for us to finally move up to, to some of these zones. I do want us to see, break above 8,300 in order to really see some bullish momentum coming in. If I move to a lower time frame, if I go to an hourly time frame and clean up some of this that I've got on this chart, there is a trend line that we were able to break through. So we were able to break through this. We are seeing a bullish cross on the 21 and the 55 exponential and the hourly. But I would still like to see us come back down here and retest this. So if this 21 exponential continues to kind of move up here and we start to see some movement on this, I want to see this price come down here and retest this for support. This looks like it's just a little over 8,000 before we move up to potentially retest that 8,300 mark. So I do want to see that happen. That would be a good ABC correction for that. So that's kind of where I'm seeing us go from there. Now, if we do break down from this, and I do think we probably will to complete this, this 5 waves down, which will complete our Y, right? So if we're looking at this larger structure here, let's move into a double combo. So from up here, we've got our W, and then we have our X, and then we're going to come down here for our Y. And again, this could come down to 7,200, somewhere between 7,200 and 7,500. Something that I'm looking at here, the significance and the importance of 72 to 7,500 is if we look at the weekly. And I'm going to have to zoom way out on this. If we look at the weekly, we are bouncing right now off the 55 exponential, which is sitting right at, and again, getting an accurate number here, 55 exponential is at 7,700. I would say the 200 exponential, we don't have that on this chart. So let me move to a different chart here where we have these values. So looking at this, yeah, so we're still continuing to bounce off of this. The 200 exponential is at 5,200, but 77.48, 77.50 at the 55 exponential, that's where we have been bouncing on the weekly. We've been bouncing there. It's been looking quite nice. And if we look at the monthly, looking at the monthly here, we have down here, and this is at 7,000, our 21 exponential on the monthly. Something that is, people talk about this a little bit, what's the direction of our moving averages? Back here in 2014, 2015, the 21 exponential was moving down on the monthly. We did have that downward pressure on this. In order for us to see our 21 exponential start to curl down, we really have to see some movement below it, which is at 6,800. I don't see that happening. On the weekly, what's the weekly doing? Weekly is currently curled down a little bit. So we should see our resistance here at about 89.50. And as the weeks go by, I'm going to see this start to move down a little bit more because our price action is below it. I'm going to see our resistance moving closer and closer to where our price action is. Our support, however, is currently pretty solid. We have 3 weeks where we did attempt to break through this 55 exponential at about 77.50, and we haven't been able to do it. Right now, we're back pushing. We're pushing up closer to 8,200 again, and so we're seeing a bullish engulfing on the weekly. And I say that with a grain of salt because it's Monday. right? So Monday, lots and lots can happen between now and then. The candle that we did see last week, however, was a bit of a reversal candle. We saw a nice move and a rejection inside of it, and although the body didn't tend to close the way I would have liked it to, it wasn't anything really too concerning. What I will say is it looks very similar to what we saw back here on the week of April 22nd. That one looks very similar to what we saw last week. Of course, the price action going up to it didn't really match up, but the candle, just a little wick down below, a large wick up at the top. One could see that as a lot of resistance pushing us down. Another one could see this as, more accumulation. We could see this as an accumulation candle. So as long as we close a weekly above 77.50, I'm still cautiously bullish at this point. Again, going back to what we see here from the top, we see this A and then this B, and then moving ourselves into a C. So while I haven't seen us test 7,500, I do think 7,500 is likely to happen after we finish this 1, 2, 3, 4, and let me just draw this out here. So moving from up here, we see a 1, 2, a 3, moving ourselves up to a 4 to maybe test that 21 exponential, and then moving ourselves back down here to a 5. And this 5, it could be 7,500. There is likelihood that this could actually fall down here to that 6,400 level. And while that would be, not the greatest to see, I can see us coming down here to test this. Let me get off the log scale at this point and just kind of show you where that could potentially be laying. Move this here, and I'll get this channel drawn out properly so that we can see where this might take us. So taking us down here to the median line approximately. This goes all the way to Thanksgiving basically, which really in all actuality does set us up pretty well for a decent run for December. But what that does mean is potentially we could have, a bounce up here to get us up to this 4, which is, right now looking about 8,800, 8,900 as we take into account time. Moving us back down here to the 6,400 is possible. I would say, let me just go ahead and clear this out. We are in prime buying zone right now, and I told everybody on the Discord server that this is the time to buy. And a couple reasons why. All right, first off, coming down here to the bottom, which was our 200 simple moving average on the weekly, and going all the way up here, we are sitting below the 50, but let me put up the 618 here. We are sitting, and I've got this reversed. Let me fix that. We are sitting between the 50 and the 618. Right, so where's the 618? That's 7,300. So looking at this, you have to take this as a trader to, to take this as a position to move upward, right? And if you are on the opposite camp where you're looking at this from the top, and then you're working your way down in this perspective, and you saw the rejection that we had here at the 65 between the 618 and the 65, you saw this as a position to short. Well, this is a position down here. Right now, our 200 exponential is still moving up. We are trading above the 200 simple. We're trading above the 200 simple. We're trading above the 55 exponential. And until we get a weekly close below this, I would not be surprised to see, maybe not this week, maybe next week, to see us wick down here into this zone where we get the 7,300, the 7,200 penetrated. But if we are able to close above the 55 exponential with price action that takes us down to between 7,000 and 7,300, that is a huge, huge sign that we need to buy Bitcoin in this area. Where's your stop going to be? Your stop, in my opinion, is going to be kind of low. I would be looking for that 6,200 to, to stop out on a position like this, because what we're talking about here is we're talking about a much larger move upward. So we're talking basically an algo target of 16,400. So 16,400 is where we're looking for this to resolve to. If we pivot, if we have already pivoted here, then we're still looking at 16,400 for this next wave, for this algo target. And you know, this falls into play pretty well with this zone right here. We're looking, that's at 16,220. That's on our candle body closure. You know, back here looking at the beginning of January. So this is significant for us to take this as a trader for a long position. And when I say long position, let me just talk about that for a moment. Taking leverage is much different than just spot buying and going long on a spot position. I see this as perfect opportunity to buy Bitcoin at a spot, you know, on your spot exchanges, not taking a leverage trade and waiting for 16,200, 16,400 to take play. And if you do, don't don't use really high leverage. Be very, very careful. 5x tops. I would say like 2 or 3x. You know, start off. If you're going to do leverage trade, be very, very careful. And I'm not your financial advisor, and none of this should be taken as financial advice. But what I will say is, if you're going to do this, you need to be very careful, because if you do high leverage, and if we do take this wick down here to 7,200, you're likely going to get liquidated. I'm being upfront and honest. Do not take a leverage long in this position. If you do a 1x trade, maybe go half in on cross leverage, and just wait for this pivot to occur, because I do believe we are going to wick down here. I do believe we are. Now, where this wick stops, I can't say that for sure. If it stops here at the 618 or the 65, that's fantastic. That's a perfect technical pivot. But if we don't, you know, you're still getting a good, decent position here. And if you're just half in, or you're all in on a 1x leverage trade, and we start to move up, you know, increase your position on a retrace, right? So if you're on 1x right here, we go up here and we retrace above the 21 exponential on the weekly, that would be a good time to maybe go 2x. Be very, very conservative on these positions, because it's very easy for us to, you know, pivot down here, work our way up, and then we do go down here, and instead of pivoting down here to move up, maybe we just go ahead and just kind of curl over and work our way down. Then you're talking about liquidation again on these leverage exchanges. You have to be very careful with your funds. You have to be very careful with your hard-earned money and your hard-earned cash. So be very careful with that. What I will say, right now we're bullish above the 55 exponential on the weekly. If I take a look back here, we had a bullish spring, which we did not do over here. But what we have done is something very similar to this, which, so as long as we're taking a couple weeks, I'm seeing us move up here, and maybe we get above the 21 exponential like we did here, and we fail, and we go back down here to the 55 exponential, then we break down, and then we start to, you know, see a little bit of a consolidation. You know, we start to see a little bit of this happening. If we see that happening, then I would be more concerned about your longer term, your outlook. So if we start to see a formation, a fractal, if you will, like we saw in 2018, then I will be getting a little more concerned. But as long as we start to trade above this 21 exponential, and we see a little bit of accumulation up here, and then we see this movement up, of course that would be our signal that this is an accurate reading and that 16,400 is likely going to happen. We are talking about several months, which is why I caution your leverage exchanges, because you're going to have your funding start to eat away at your P&L as time goes by, because funding, you know, typically is in favor of shorts. If we start to see our negative funding and we start to see funding in favor of longs, then, you know, in that case, then things are looking much, much better for this upside potential. We don't have backwardation in our futures markets, which means futures markets are currently trading at a premium against Bitcoin. So right now, if I want to take a look right now, Bitcoin, and let me take a look at this on BitMEX. So right now, BitMEX is trading at 8203. Is that right? 8203. Let me move to a 50-minute time frame. Yes, 8203. But let's take a look at a futures. If it takes XBT Z19. So this is our December futures market. We're 8227, so slightly at a slight premium. We haven't gone below it, or at least we are not currently below our perpetual price, which is which is still slightly bullish. Our premiums used to be much higher, and we're talking a December, so we're looking at 3 months away, almost 3 months away, not quite. So if we start to see these futures markets go below Bitcoin's price, then of course we have to reevaluate a little bit because that does tend to put a little bit of a bearish outlook on things. Another thing to take a look at, um, taking a look at CME futures, we filled that gap nicely, which is a little concerning, because looking at it from a daily time frame, we were able to close that gap because we opened it down here. We were able to close that. So going to maybe a 4-hour time frame, you can see we had the gap right here. And we were able to close that. And we're currently trading again on a 4-hour, trading above the 21 exponential, the 55 exponential sitting here at about 8,500. So if we're looking at this again, looking at this from an A, a B, and looking up for a C, we can get a nice flat here at 8,500. I would be really skeptical taking a long leverage position here at this point. Personally, I would be looking for a short position somewhere in this range. And for us to kind of make that move down, we're going to be looking for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on our way down. Where that lands still remains to be seen. I am looking at 7,500, but it might not get that low. But still, spot buys in this zone are pretty decent. Definitely down here in this zone where we saw at 7,800 level, those were really great areas to buy. And again, if you were in the Discord, you knew that I was talking about buying it. So again, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to pop in the Discord, let me know. And, I always try and, keep a close eye on things. Of course, if you don't have an invite to the Discord, it doesn't cost anything to join. It's nothing like that. But we do, require that you send me a DM to get an invite to it. But yeah, feel free to, spread the word if you like what we're talking about here, and feel free to subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. Although, I'm not gonna push it too much, but yeah. So again, if you have any questions, pop in the Discord. Be more than happy to answer anything that you have. Otherwise, I will talk to you all in the Discord. So have a good day, everyone.